How do you do? And welcome to Geeks Assembled. The Geeks feel it would be a little unkind to present this cast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to, well, we warned you. But first, a little background on the adaptations. This was the first adaptation of Frankenstein was in 1910, silent, of course, made by Edison Studios, where Frankenstein puts a skeleton in a vat of chemicals and forms the creature around the skeleton. In 1915, they remade it as Life Without Soul. The whole story was played out, but it all turned out to be Frankenstein's dream. And in 1920, the Italians had a go with a silent film again called Il Mostro di Frankenstein. Then in 1931, Universal Pictures made the film that we are discussing tonight. And for our first reaction, I think we'll go over to Alex. Alex, how did Frankenstein move you?
Well, I've seen many different versions. I do like the radio version also. It's a very interesting subject. It's very dark. It set the tone of many of the Gothic thrillers to come after it. Very heavy themes, a lot of interesting dialogue, many characters. It is a good creation, and I like the movies. And I like the sequels as well that I saw on a Saturday afternoon in the local station. As I said, I've also heard radio versions. My mother has the book, actually. So I would say that it's definitely an interesting movie, definitely worth watching. It has themes about life, creation, people that are different than you. It has a lot of semi and bittersweet comical moments as well. And I'd give it about a 7, I'd say.
So a 7 out of 10 from Alex. And you obviously enjoyed it. So we'll go over to Connor, the Dark Man.
Thanks, Beefdad. Yeah, I think this is a really great movie. For 1941, well set out. You know, the sets are really good. I like the laboratory for Henry Frankenstein. I think the monsters got really good makeup, played by Boris Karloff. Yeah, I think overall it's a really good movie. Some of the actors are a bit before my time, so I'm not quite sure about their particular backgrounds. But I think overall it was a really great performances from them. You know, as I said, Henry was really well acted. The monster was, for a non-speaking part, again, really quite terrifying in some places, I think. I liked the little girl, Maria. She was in it for only a brief time, but I think that was a really quite a good child actor for what she had to do. Yeah, I think the movie. I think some of the scenes I did like was the sort of riot scene through the town when the farmers, Maria's dad brought the dead body through the town, and they all had to go searching for the monster. That was a really great scene. I think the final scene with the fight from the top of the windmill was really good. And I think also the scenes when what's his name? When Frankenstein strangled Henry Frankenstein's assistant, the monster. I think that was a really good scene as well. The screams were very, very piercing. They were sort of terrifying as well. It wasn't as scary as I wanted it to be, but I think overall, yeah, I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
An 8 out of 10. Interesting. Okay. Well, over to Yorkshire Way. And the unusual Mr. Lee Wilson.
Thank you, Beefdad. Yes, some of the actors were before Connor's time. Yes, there would be. This film's 85 years old. What do you say? Universal was onto a good thing with the monster horror films at this time. And to give Boris Karloff this role, this iconic role now, when people say Frankenstein, I mean, we know that was the doctor, but the creature, you automatically think of the Karloff. You know, the facial features, the makeup, you know, the flat head, the bolts. To me, that is Frankenstein's monster. There's been many after that, but to me, that always comes to mind when you say that name. And it was absolutely awesome in the role, as it's been said. Not a non-speaking role. There was a few girls and all like that, but a non-speaking role for this actor, and he made it his own. It was, I say, for its time, it's a brilliant movie. It's a short movie, 70 minutes long, and as Connor mentioned, the little girl Maria. I'm sorry, but every time I see that scene, I just laugh. I shouldn't do, but the way. The way Karloff just picks her up and throws her in the water. Sorry, that has me in hysterics. Right, because it just gets me thinking of Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein as well. But it is a good film. It stands up to date. Without these films, without these actors like Karloff, Lugosi, even the Man of a Thousand Faces, Lon Chaney, we wouldn't have any of these horror movies. Pardon, Beefdad?
Lon Chaney Sr.
Yes, I know. And there was Junior who played the Wolfman. But, yeah, without these people, the horror movies of today, this is their legacy. And for that reason, I'm giving it a 10 because it is an enjoyable film. And I would say to anybody, watch it. Okay, it's not as scary as the modern movies these days. But back then in 1931, it had those audiences screaming. Over to you, Beefdad.
So, 10 out of 10 from Lee. Well, I'm considerably older than everybody else. But even I wasn't alive when this film was made. It was made 17 years before I was born. And I can tell you now that in the cinemas, you didn't actually see the scene. Well, you didn't actually see Boris Karloff pick up the little girl and throw her in the water. That scene was edited. It was replaced in the 1980s. The same as Colin Clive saying, "It's alive, it's alive." Now I know how it feels to be God was also cut, and because of religious people, I suppose. But that was again replaced in the 1980s. I got lots of interesting things to tell you about this. The makeup for Boris Karloff took between 3 and 4 hours every day to put on, and about 3 to 4 hours every day to take off. And then bear in mind, he'd have something like a 12-hour shooting day. So he would he would basically, he was getting by on 6 hours sleep. On one particular day, he actually was up for 24 hours recording and doing the makeup and everything. He contributed to the makeup himself. He had a bridge, and if you notice, there is a sunken bit on the side of Frankenstein's face, which Jack Pierce accentuated with some shadowing. But it's basically, he took out the bridge, sucked in his cheek, and it gave his face that slightly lopsided look. I know how the makeup was done. It was done with cotton wool and collodion, which was built up layer by layer by layer. Similarly, the top of his head. But apparently Jack Pierce did lots of research in brain surgery and how they took off the top of people's heads to do brain surgery. And so that was one reason why it ended up with a flat head, because it was like a box. The box was lifted, the brain was put in, connected, the box was closed. The closest anybody ever came to duplicating it, oddly enough, was Herman Munster in the Munsters. And he also was superb. On a serious note, this film is an adaptation of a stage play, which was an adaptation of just part of Mary Shelley's novel. Because Bride of Frankenstein, which you get a few years later, the bride is also in the book. But one of the things that Boris Karloff said to me when I was having tea on the lawn with him in Dulwich, when he'd come over to watch the cricket and invited a young fan who had sent him a fan letter to tea. God bless the man, a real gentleman. And he said the one thing he was unsure of taking part was they had given the creature no dialogue whatsoever, and yet in the book he is quite loquacious, should we say. He has an excellent command of language and uses it. But that obviously would not go down too well with the fee-paying public. They want a monster that they can be scared of. And it's rather difficult to be scared of someone who, although they might be ugly, is putting forward a rational argument. Yep, for me, this has always been an absolutely magical film. And if I could give it 20 out of 10, I would, but I'll give it it gets the whole 10 out of 10 for me.
This is my review for the Geeks Assembled movie night, talking about Frankenstein, the Boris Karloff Frankenstein. This is a really intense old movie. The women and the men are cut from the cloth of the 1930s movie style. The women scream, the men sort of run and carry torches, but Henry Frankenstein, the main character, the scientist, is wonderful. He's got a great idea and he goes for it and he creates this life from lifelessness. Some of the most iconic things in motion pictures ever is in this movie. There's the it's alive, it's alive. line. And then there's the chasing Victor around, and Victor is tormented by the monster. The monster, played by Boris Karloff, whose name is not listed actually in the beginning credits, and so that's really interesting because he plays the monster quite intensely. He's got great physicality. It's kind of wonderful watching him, watching the moment where he meets Mary down at the lake, the little girl, and receives her flower and takes it to his nose and sniffs, and then but then he gets sideways somehow and throws her in the lake. Anyway, it's just interesting. It's got great iconic moments, and the end where the whole village is chasing him up the mountain with torches into the mill, and subsequently burns the mill to the ground. Interesting. Henry Frankenstein is a really interesting character, and his bride-to-be, though, is really one of those two-dimensional, 1930s movies characters, but Henry's got some depth, and I really enjoyed this movie, and I'll give it a 9. Thanks.
And now I'll throw the floor open. Anyone got anything they want to add? Anything you had this out with?
Yeah, as Connor mentioned earlier, the laboratory. It's the iconic scene in the lab, the electricity, all the whirling dials and all that. That, for me, my childhood, when these used to be shown late on a night, shall we say, just stuck in my head, all that lot. It's just iconic scenery like that. Even you said, the villagers with the burning torches and the pitchforks. I mean, brilliant story. Dr. Frankenstein, the actor's name escapes me.
Colin Clive.
Colin Clive, yeah. I read somewhere down the line, he got the part because he was, shall we say, is he sleeping with the director?
No, he'd worked with the director.
Sorry, I missed that.
They'd worked together previously.
Ah, right. Okay. Sleeping works, same thing.
He drank with
yeah.
what finally killed him.
Yeah. It was also, to say, he was brilliant in the role as Dr. Frankenstein. The way his insanity, because he was literally insane at the beginning of the movie. And halfway through, he became sane again. Married, marrying his love. They sort of dragged him away from his insanity of trying to create life. But he was absolutely brilliant in the role. Yeah, but for me though, it is Karloff what does make this movie. It just stands out. Karloff is, for me, the best Frankenstein monster ever.
Mm-hmm. Well, Colin Clive, actually, he died something like 7 or 8 years after Frankenstein was made, from alcoholism. He was a chronic alcoholic. Yeah, nobody's mentioned. Nobody's mentioned Frankenstein's wife, who played by May Clark. She was absolutely perfect in the role. She looked the part, she acted the part. And Frankenstein's father was just amazing as the Baron. There was some wonderful little cameo parts in it, like the Burgomaster. Absolutely superb, absolutely brilliant, the man was. And so much like so many Bavarians I've seen living over here in Germany. Yeah, the whole thing about it is it was... Mary Shelley wrote it when she was in Switzerland with Byron and Shelley. But the thing is, she set it in Ingolstadt, which is in Germany. It's in Bavaria. And the city that I live in now is the other half of the university. They do the science over there. They do the philosophy and everything in Eichstätt, where I live. And so it's pretty special. Yeah, the one thing that Boris Karloff said to me was that carrying the most painful part of the whole film was carrying Colin Clive up in the windmill. There was no way that they could use a dummy. It had to be Colin Clive. He said Colin couldn't help because he was in shot all the time. So he literally had to manhandle him up time after time after time to get the shots right. And he ended up with back problems that continued right the way through his life from that. He had to have operations on his back and everything. Yes, it was. It's a wonderful, wonderful, magical piece of cinema. I'm hoping that one day, soon, we will do The Bride of Frankenstein, which was headlined out to the public as The Monster Speaks. And you actually hear him speak. Not very well, admittedly, but he speaks. So, yeah, well, unless anyone else has got anything to add.
Well, apart from one thing, you know, back then, 85 years ago, the studios didn't pay much attention to health and safety.
Not at all.
Especially with the actors. And you can see it's the actors in the scenes with all the fire. And, you know, and they did go over the top with the fire. I mean, even when they had the fight sticks on fire and that, and they're poking it in front of Boris's face. I mean, you won't get that these days. The no. But back then, they don't care. The actors didn't matter.
But that's what made it so iconic. I mean, the thing, if you think of villagers storming a castle, they've all got flaming torches and pitchforks. You know, that's it. It just made a legend, really.
Yeah, and for an 85-year-old, I'll keep saying this 85-year-old film, it's still enjoyable today. You know, you can sit down from beginning to end, and you think that is just a marvelous piece of work.
So there you are, everybody. Now you have it. If you have never seen the Universal 1931 Frankenstein, this is something that you must watch. Put it on your to-watch list. Put it on the top of your to-watch. It's a short film, but you'll love it. So from us, it's good night. Thank you for joining us. We've really enjoyed your company. Please tell your friends. Leave comments. Tell us if you liked it or not. We're fascinated to find out. And there's lots more interesting and exciting things to come on our channel. So God bless you all and have a wonderful week.